Hey guys, Dr. Alex here, the Punch Doctor, and today I want to talk about the right way to throw a hook and whether to land with your palm facing you or your palm turned over. Now, the answer is you want to land with your palm facing you for three main reasons. First of all, there's no reason to turn it over from a mechanical standpoint. It's not part of the follow-through and it does nothing for you mechanically. In fact, it's going to weaken you because my second point is that when you're turning your wrist over, when your hand is down and you're making impact, you're essentially only using one kinetic chain. I'm going to explain that in just a second. When you land with your palm facing you, you're able to utilize three kinetic chains. The more kinetic chains you utilize, the more power you're going to be able to generate, and the more power you're going to be able to transfer into your opponent. It's just going to be a stronger punch. The third reason, you simply have more stability in your wrist and your shoulder when you're landing with your palm facing you. Now let's get into it. So reason number one, turning your wrist over does not give you any sort of mechanical advantage, nor is it part of the natural follow-through for a hook. It's useless. When you're throwing a straight punch, yeah, you're going to turn your shoulder over. Reason being, that punch very closely mimics a throw, whether you're throwing a baseball or you're throwing a football. And the reason you turn over your arm, turn over your shoulder, is because that's simply the natural mechanics of the shoulder. It prevents you from jamming your elbow by locking it out or hyperextending it. And it's simply the natural mechanics. You'll see any guy throwing a baseball or throwing a football doing that exact same thing. And remember, you're throwing a punch. You're not pushing a punch, you're throwing a punch. When you throw it, moment of impact, you grab your wrist, and then there's an unwinding and a follow-through where you put your energy through your opponent, and then you're back ready for another shot. In a hook, turning anything over is not part of the natural mechanics. It's not part of the follow-through. The follow-through in a hook is you transferring your weight past the center line, which is your point of impact. So you want to put everything in motion, grab your wrist at the point of impact or just nearly before. What that does, it turns your forearm into a very stable platform, into a club. It'll prevent any sort of wrist movement. So you land, grab your fist, and you're transferring your weight through. And then you're ready for another shot, whether you want to cut with the right or whatever. So it's not part of the natural follow-through, and it's simply unnecessary. And it's going to cause you to land with less power, which is my second point. When you're throwing a hook and you're turning over your wrist or throwing it in that motion, you're really only utilizing one kinetic chain. When you're throwing a hook and you land with your palm towards you, you can utilize up to three. So you're going to be able to generate more power and transfer more power. The chain you're using when you're throwing a hook with the palm down is called the deep front arm line. It starts in the thumb, goes through a small muscle in your forearm, goes into your bicep, and then into your pec minor. It terminates in the pec minor, meaning it ends there. It doesn't connect with any other chains. Now, your pec minor is a stabilizer. Stabilizing muscles are meant to stabilize a joint, while the prime movers either create power or transfer power. Create power like in a linear movement, or transfer power like in a throw or a punch. So since it ends there, and it's a stabilizer, you're missing out on a lot of potential, a lot of missed potential. When you're throwing a hook with your palm facing you, you're utilizing up to three kinetic chains. And like I said, the more kinetic chains you use, the more power you're going to be able to generate, and the more power you're going to be able to transfer. The kinetic chains you use when you throw a hook with your palm facing you is the front superficial arm line, which starts with the palm, goes into the flexors, which are the big strong muscles that stabilize your wrist. So when you're using them at impact, it's going to be a much more stable platform to land with. You're using your flexors, upper arm, and then it goes into your pec major and your lats. Yes, the front superficial arm line goes into your pec major and your lats. At that point, they have an opportunity to link up with two other chains, the front functional line and the back functional line. The front functional line connects your pec major to your abs and then goes into your legs. The back functional line goes from your lats into your glutes, and it goes to the other glutes on the other side. So you're able to fully utilize three kinetic chains. And remember, when you throw a punch, when you start throwing a punch, that energy, that power is coming from your legs to put your hips into rotation, and then it creates torque in your torso, which transfers the power through your shoulder, through your arm, and into your opponent. So by utilizing 3 kinetic chains, you're able to start generating power right from the hip rotation, which goes through the torso in the front and the back, through your shoulder, into your opponent. So to recap, you're only using one very weak kinetic chain when you're throwing a hook with the palm facing the ground, and you're able to utilize up to 3 kinetic chains when you're throwing a hook with your palm facing you. Not only that, but think of throwing a hook to the body. Think of throwing an uppercut. It's essentially the same movement. Are you turning over your wrist when you're throwing an uppercut? Are you turning over your wrist when you're throwing a hook to the body? No, that would be ridiculous. No one's throwing a hook like that. In fact, try it on the bag. Turn your wrist over and try to land with a hook to the body like that. First of all, it's awkward and weird, and second of all, it just feels weak. So try landing with your palm facing you. It's going to feel much more stable, much more solid. So if you're not turning over your wrist in an uppercut or a hook to the body, why on earth would you do it with a hook to the head? It's essentially the same movement. You're utilizing the same chains. Essentially, it's the same movement. You're just putting it in a different location. So try it. You can try turning over your wrist when you throw a hook to the head, and then try it with a neutral wrist. I think very quickly you'll see what feels more stable and what makes more sense. So my third point is that landing with your palm facing you with a neutral wrist is much more stable than landing with the palm facing the ground. Now remember, when your palm is facing you, you're able to utilize up to 3 kinetic chains. And the superficial front arm line goes into the lats and the chest. So, a little bit of a digression here. When you're bench pressing, and I know that linear weight room strength doesn't really have a huge impact or a very significant impact on punching power at all. However, what feels more stable in a bench press? You pressing with your elbows up or with your elbows a little bit down? Of course, it's with your elbows in a more neutral position. Reason being, when you bring your elbow up, you're losing tension in your lats and your teres major, and you're simply not utilizing the chest as much as you possibly could, as if your shoulders were in a more neutral position. When you're landing a hook with your elbow up, it's the same thing. You've lost tension in your lats, you've lost some tension in your pec major. Try this as an exercise. Get into a hook position with your palm down and try to just stabilize the bag with your elbow up. Yeah, you can do it. However, now try it with a neutral wrist, with your elbow a little bit lower than that horizontal line. It's going to feel much more stable. You can hold this out here almost indefinitely because you're using a lot more muscles. Now, sure, if you hit someone just right with your palm down, you could probably spark them out. However, if you really want to maximize your punching power for consistency and to land with as much power as possible, you want to keep your palm facing you. So to recap, turning your wrist over in a hook, it's not part of the natural mechanics of the shoulder. It's simply useless. The follow through is transferring your weight through the center line where your point of impact is. Second of all, throwing a hook with your palm facing the ground utilizes a very weak kinetic chain, and you're missing out on 3 much larger, stronger, and more stable kinetic chains when your palm is facing you. When your palm is facing you, you're using the superficial front arm line, which goes into the pec major and the lats, the front functional line, which goes from your pec major into your lower body, and the back functional line, which goes from your lats into your glutes. And then third, you're simply landing with a more stable shoulder and a more stable wrist when your wrist is neutral or your palm is facing you. So remember, almost all power generation in any sort of sport, whether you're throwing a baseball, throwing a football, swinging a golf club, or throwing a punch, it all comes from utilization of kinetic chains. If you really want to learn how to identify and train and utilize your kinetic chains to the best of your ability to maximize the punching power you can generate, check out my course, The Power Punching Blueprint, at howtopunchharder.com. Other than that, like and subscribe, hit the bell so you see every new video that I put out. If you have questions or comments, put them down below. I love to answer your questions, so if anything in the gym doesn't make sense to you, if you want clarification on anything boxing related, go ahead and put it down there. I'll do my best to answer it as well as possible. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.